This is Men's Sacred Liberation Podcast, a place for the men of Charlotte to share their honest experiences about life. Welcome to another episode of Men's Sacred Liberation Podcast. My name is Brian Straheen, and I'm a clinical therapist in private practice in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I focus on men through the lens of holistic health and wellness. And I want to introduce my guest for today's episode, Matt Robson. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Thank you for being here. Let's get down to business. You're a man who loves coffee. Is that right?
It happens to be my favorite vice.
Yes. And I've heard that it's not just any type of coffee. It's a very specific type. So tell everyone what type of coffee you're getting yourself into.
So previously, it was Folgers coffee pot coffee at the corporate office.
That's part of waking up.
Fast forward 6-7 years later, I find myself drinking Vietnamese coffee. I roast it at my apartment. I've got a grinder. I've got an espresso machine. So it's turned from, hey, I'm at the office today, I need a cup or three, to more of a ritual now that I enjoy and take my time and start each morning with.
This is serious. You're roasting, you're brewing. That's not a Folgers cup, if you will. So tell us about where this love for Vietnamese coffee and the roasting and the brewing started.
So let's go back to 2016.
Yes.
Was working a corporate job, 8 years. Had a pretty good life here, had friends, family, was climbing that ladder, right? Doing everything that I was told I needed to do to find happiness.
All right.
I was a pretty happy guy, but there was something brewing, pun intended, inside me where I knew there was more. I needed more adventure in my life, and that took me to Vietnam, all the way across the world. And they just happened to be the world's second largest producer of coffee, and not just any cup of joe. It's strong coffee, twice the caffeine, they say. It's a slow brewed process. It's a ritual for everybody, from kids to teens to elders. And we'll get into some of the unique recipes that they brew over there. But that's where I officially fell in love with coffee, was over in Vietnam.
Okay.
Back in 2016.
So something captured my attention as you were talking. You are in this job, life is good, you're working, friends, socializing.
Oh, yeah.
And something is brewing inside of you. And you answer the call to explore what that is. And you leave Charlotte and end up in Vietnam. I would imagine, and this resonates with me because I've also felt that brewingness inside of me and wondered what that is, and at times had to leave either my job or where I was living and go and explore elsewhere to dig deeper into that brewingness. So I'm wondering, as you've looked back at your life, are you more aware now of what was brewing? What really instigated that brewingness inside of you?
Definitely. It was really, I wanted an adventure, to be quite honest.
Okay.
Always had a love for travel. You know, I did a couple of weeks here and there during the 8 years after college. Had a eye-opening experience, actually, spring break in college to the Dominican Republic. I volunteered in a village with Habitat for Humanity. Poor village. We're in there with, the whole family. Everybody's helping. We're mixing concrete for 10 hours a day. We're eating amazing food. We're connecting as well as we could with the locals.
Mm.
Most of them didn't speak English, so it was like, how can we communicate? And I dabble un poco in Spanish,
Okay.
and that experience, I knew I would eventually live somewhere abroad after going through that 10-day experience, and it just took 8 years to do the thing, quit the job, research. I mean, it took a year of research, right? So it wasn't a quick decision, but it was the best decision I could have made, and I felt complete after making that decision. Like that was, the feeling when you finally make a decision and you realize it's the right one.
Mm.
That's what I felt when I quit my job and taught English over in Vietnam for a year and a half, which felt like 10 years, but 18 months.
And we share that similar path in the sense that when I graduated from college, I also started to notice that something was brewing. And I graduated with a business degree, and that didn't sit right with me. It didn't sit right with me all through college. And people have asked, well, why didn't you change your major, this and that? And I didn't. And when I graduated, I joined the Peace Corps and ended up living in Romania for 2.5 years and teaching English as well. And so we've shared stories about that and bonded over that. And what I've learned from you is that travel abroad, it does something to us. Something happens when you leave the country. And I believe it can happen when you leave even Charlotte and go visit another part of North Carolina. And there's something unique about leaving the country. So you get to Vietnam. You've already had the experience from college when you left the country. You spend more time abroad in Vietnam. So what continued to brew? Other than coffee, what continued to brew in you? What came up?
I mean, we could, like I said before this, we could spend hours talking about Vietnam, but the biggest things that were brewing in me was finding more of a purpose. Like my soul was craving more. Like I said, that call for adventure, challenge. Right? I didn't have enough challenge here in Charlotte, and as soon as you get off the plane in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, you're met with many challenges, from smog to 100 degrees, humidity like never before, 8 million motorbikes in the city.
Can imagine.
Almost a 1-to-1, about 10 million people. And so that just, in that environment, it's like you were just full of energy. And my purpose being there was to teach for a year, to gain new skills, new perspectives. I learned so much. I mean, the Vietnamese are extremely hardworking people. So that's still brewing inside me, like coming back to the States. They're working 7 days a week. If you get out of the cities into the countryside, in the mountains where the ethnic minorities are, you're going to walk past 80-year-old male and men and women on the rice fields, hunched over, carrying more than their weight on their back with a big smile. And when you see that, it's like our problems here are pale in comparison. So that was brewing in me there. And then even when I'm back stateside, you get like that residual where we got it pretty damn well here. And you need to leave what you have to go somewhere else and experience that, or else it's just going to be something that you hear about on a movie and say, oh, that's tough. But yeah, you're not going to grow. You got to do it.
And what I'm hearing underneath what you're sharing is your perspective, the lens through which you see life changed, and it in many ways it opened. Maybe when you're here and you're doing life and you're living in your, call it, comfort zone, even though you're challenged here and taking on different challenges. When you leave the country, suddenly your view opens, your perspective on life and your awareness of how people live, how people eat, how people drink, how people build community, how they speak to each other. Your awareness of the differences and how that happens opens, and your perspective shifted, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Which is powerful.
Big time. Yeah.
It's powerful. And my sense is that there are listeners who are feeling the brew. Something's brewing. And they might also be wondering if leaving their job or leaving Charlotte and exploring the world is what they need to do. And I appreciate you sharing your story, because it takes courage to do that. Because there's a lot of unknowns. A lot of unknowns, especially when you get off the plane and you realize that you don't know a lot about what you see around you.
And you're alone.
And you're alone.
There's no community yet.
And probably don't speak the language.
Depending on where you go, but yeah.
That's a major barrier.
Major.
That we take for granted when we're here. So when you look back at your 20s before you ended up in Vietnam, what lessons did you learn about the choices you had made in your 20s? And is there anything that you wish you had done differently that you're now realizing you have to deal with because you didn't make certain choices when you were younger?
I wish I would have done this at 20, but I didn't.
Right.
So for those that are listening, it's never too late. I mean, I left at 30, 30 years old, booked a one-way ticket. But yeah, it needs to be done. Like, you need to, people think that if they leave their job, take a gap year, they're never going to find another job again. And I could tell you, when I got back, whenever I started interviewing again, that was like, people were blown away by that experience. But yeah, I mean, in my 20s, I was a vastly different person in my 20s than I am now. A lot of the learnings and ways I've changed happened while I was in Vietnam. In my 20s, it was all about social life.
Right.
Partying. We've had this discussion many times. Wednesday to Sunday.
Wednesday to Sunday.
The corporate job.
Right.
The $200-$300 bar tabs. And don't get me wrong, that was fun, and there's a place for it.
Sure.
But thinking back at how I was feeling during those experiences, the hangovers, the recovery, and just my wellness practices, that some of those evolved in Vietnam, like yoga. I started dabbling in yoga in Vietnam, meditation. Fast forward in my 30s, mid 30s, I mean, I'm partying once a quarter, and I'm getting a lot more done. I feel better. I started a business. Like, none of that's happening if I'm not making those critical changes from my 20s now.
Absolutely. So. And you mentioned something about that type of lifestyle and socializing, that there is a time and a place for that for some people, and it's fun for some people. And for you, there may have been a time and a place when that was fun and that was something that you desired to do. And at some point in your life, you realized that type of lifestyle needed to change. And because of your time away, it helped to bring awareness to some shifts that needed to be made. And I suspect that there are listeners who are starting to evaluate their choices in life and how they choose maybe to socialize, or the people they spend time with, or what they choose to consume. whether it's beverages or other extracurricular substances that are
Yep.
not serving them. And I also heard you say it's never too late to make a
No.
change.
No.
And stepping away from everything and hitting the reset button, if you will, has the potential to really catapult your life onto this next chapter. And I too remember when I joined the Peace Corps hearing people say, well, what are you going to do when you get back? You're still going to be jobless and you're probably not going to have much money because you don't make a lot in the Peace Corps. And what are you going to do? And I second guessed my decision at times. And yet when I look back, I can't imagine not doing that, because when I got back from the Peace Corps, my life and my perspective had changed, and it's been the most rich, deep, fulfilling life because of that lens that I now see the world through, and that's big.
Yeah.
So here we are, and you brew Vietnamese coffee. You realize that this is a passion, which I love. When you travel, you might also develop a new passion and become aware of a passion. And so we have been partnering on some projects together.
That's right.
Say more about that. What is it that we've been working on together, and how have you found our passions to align?
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking, like I literally wouldn't be sitting here had it not been for moving to Vietnam, finding yoga. I think I met you at a yoga studio.
Right?
When I got back, we were talking about your idea, your concept for men's liberation. I started the coffee business. We've done some collaborations, and here I am. So that just goes to show, like, without that decision, I'm not sitting in this chair. And that's pretty powerful.
Wow.
But yeah, I got back from Vietnam, and I really wanted to find a way to share my experience with others around me. And it was another year in the making. Like, what could I do? Well, I love the coffee. I love coffee. And then in Vietnam, they have amazing coffee, and I couldn't find it here in Charlotte. And hey, why not be the first one to import coffee from Vietnam through connections to a former student of mine, which is crazy. She connected me with a friend of hers who I'd never met that just had a family farm. So I'm like, here I am importing these beans from somebody that I've never met. And again, those things don't happen without those experiences. Not to get into the weeds on the business, but started Robusta Coffee.
Okay.
It's a Vietnamese pop-up coffee shop. We go all around Charlotte. It's really about the experience. It's not just the coffee. And we've been able to collaborate on your love for challenge
Yes.
via ice bath.
Yes. And a challenge it is indeed. And I appreciate that the passion not only for the beans and the brewing and the serving, but the experience and community, which I think is ultimately what we share in common, is building community through our passions.
Big time.
And I love that we can take something like brewing and serving coffee and bringing people together around a tub of ice cold water
Yep.
and turn it into an experience that builds community. And that has been so much fun. And so we have an event actually coming up this Sunday, June 25th. What is that?
Yep. So Sunday, June 25th is the largest community ice bath and coffee event in Charlotte.
For sure.
It's going to be from 10 to 2 at the Village at Commonwealth Apartments. We're going to be serving delicious Vietnamese coffee. We're going to be facilitating ice baths.
Yes.
And it's just a way for, as you said, to bring the community together. The vehicle is just the coffee and the ice, but
Right.
there's so many other underlying benefits of coming out and enjoying an experience like that. For the first timers, sitting in cold water, 35 degrees is not easy. So it's a physical, mental challenge that we create and set up for others to experience themselves. The coffee is very strong, so you're going to be
Oh yeah.
as if you need the ice to jack you up. You're going to be jacked up on the coffee, the ice bath experience, and then making new connections in the community.
Right.
And reaping the benefits of the ice, because there's so many. I mean,
Yes.
just your feeling of well-being after it. Just there's a 6 hour, or at least for me, residual effect.
Oh, I'm
Not to get too deep in the health
I'm
benefits,
shaking just thinking about it.
but yeah, I'm pumped. So this Sunday,
Yes. And everyone is
let's get it
invited,
on.
young and old, dogs, cats, rubber duckies, and all the things in between. And I so appreciate this because it really is a culmination of, for me and you, to bring this experience of life we've had, the journeys we've been on together, into what in Men's Sacred Liberation I call embodiment. To fully embody your purpose in life by coming together, the two of us, and sharing this purpose with others, building community, your love for coffee, my love for cold immersion, and bringing opportunities to challenge people and to have them face their fears, to push themselves out of their comfort zone. You don't need to go to Vietnam or Romania for that. You can simply stand at the face of an ice bath and know that you will
Yeah.
you will be challenged to step out of your comfort zone, just like getting on that plane and going and moving to another country. And so I am honored to partner with you on these projects.
Yep.
And also was honored to have you at the last Men's Sacred Liberation men's retreat in April,
Yep.
where we did have an ice bath. And so I'm curious, as we close this episode, what was something you appreciated about that day retreat experience with other men?
Whew. I mean, it's an amazing thing what you're doing to bring these men together out of the office, out of the bar, to where they can be their authentic selves. I loved the mix of activities, the physicality, the camaraderie. A lot of men, myself, and I know you as well, were used to having that friend group in college,
Right.
sports teams, right? And you can lose sight of that if you move to Charlotte, a banking city, and work 80 hours a week. And so this opportunity that you've created brings everybody together in a alcohol-free environment
Yes.
where you're feeling good. So some of those practices that you and Robert have thrown in the mix there are meant for you to be in your body, to be in your masculine. So the chanting in the circle, it's challenging, right? It gets you out of your comfort zone. So
Right.
another example of that. And to be able to do all that variety in one day is pretty remarkable. So I loved it, and I would encourage anybody else that's craving that experience that they had at one point, but now for whatever reason they're lacking, to commit
Right.
and check it out for themselves.
And that's key. And I appreciate that you've supported the mission, and I see our events that we host together very much a part of this Men's Sacred Liberation movement of creating space for men and all humans to be fully alive, to be fully embodied, fully alive in their bodies, living in their emotions, living in their truth, and expressing that fully. The world needs that. And I'm so honored that the world gets to meet you through this podcast, to meet another man who is fully alive and embodied. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yep.
So we look forward to seeing everyone on July 25th at the Community
June
Ice
25th.
Bath. June, thank you. June 25th. I'm so excited. I'm getting
Maybe
the
July
date right.
25th if it's
We might have
after
to do
it's
it again.
a success. Yeah.
Yes, and people can find you where if they want to taste your coffee in another arenas. Where can they find you again?
Instagram at Robusta Coffee Co.
Great.
And I post all the events there.
Wonderful. We'll make sure that we put all of your information at the end of the episode so people can get that and contact you and access you and see you very, very soon. That's a wrap. That's another episode of Men's Sacred Liberation. We look forward to seeing you again real soon.